What are my choices?
About 100 miles of nothing in both directions.
Well, which way you think they went?
Well, you got two choices. One of them's wrong.
I think they went left.
I don't know why. I think they went right.
Together, Scully. How many times have I been wrong? Never. Not driving, anyway.
Welcome to Most Unwanted, an X-Files podcast. Very special episode of an X-Files podcast. We will be looking at the film today. I am joined to discuss the X-Files film by Luke Costin. How are you doing, Luke?
I don't know why I was going to pretend that I wasn't Luke Costin then for a laugh, but that'd be weak, to be honest. But I'm doing okay. A few days removed from watching the film, so a lot running through my head to talk about, to be fair.
Yeah, there's a lot to get into. So it's a little bit of a different episode today. As I said, we'll be looking at the first film. I think from what I read, there's a little bit of umming and ahhing as to what actually it's called, because I think it's called The X-Files, the film, and the tagline for the film was Fight for the Future. Or Fight the Future.
Fight the Future, yeah.
But no one actually knows whether that was part of the title or just a tagline, so it just kind of took on life of its own. But yeah, we'll be looking through that today. I'm really looking forward to this. This should be quite fun.
Yeah. There's a lot to discuss from this film. Understandably, a lot happens in a 2-hour film. But it's not even just like the length of it, it's just how much they pack into 2 hours, really, I think.
Yeah, definitely. I think so. What we'll do is we're going to do the episode a little bit different to usual today. I think what we're going to do is we're going to try and get straight into it, because obviously there's a lot to talk about. And I think we discussed before the show, I don't think we're going to break this down scene by scene. I think that's probably, it's probably just a little bit boring for everybody, if we're honest, going through a 2-hour film scene by scene.
Yeah, I feel like your time would probably be better spent watching the film if our podcast was going to be 2 hours long. So,
in all honesty, that's probably the better way to spend your time anyway. Just watch the show. If you fancy, listen to us afterwards. But yeah, what we'll do is we'll break it down into maybe little bite-sized chunks, and then we'll just keep stopping and sort of discussing what we think about that part of the film. So with that in mind, I don't want to rush you into it, Luke, but there's so much to talk about. Should we just get straight to it? So this week, like I said, we'll be looking at The X-Files Fight for the Future, the first feature film in the X-Files franchise. It was directed by Rob Bowman and produced by Chris Carter and Daniel Sackheim. There's probably a few more credits that we could probably mention along the way here, because obviously a film takes a little bit more crew to deal with.
Yeah.
Stars all your favourite casts. You've got your David Duchovny, Gillian Anderson. They've all come back.
Literally everybody, like every main-ish character, or main or secondary character is in this, from what I remember. That's still alive anyway. Yeah,
exactly. There's a lot of. So all your regular cast come back, and then even there are new characters introduced, but they stick to the same X-Files tradition of casting generally unknown actors for their roles. But I like it. I like the idea that you don't have a superstar come in and take the shine away from the protagonists of the show.
Do you know what's interesting? The production notes say that the new people were the stars, they were well-established actors. But I
didn't recognise it, apart from the obvious, which we will get to, obviously.
Yeah.
As all of our fans know, we do like Lost, so we will talk about.
Don't you worry, we will mention it at some point.
And probably worth mentioning just quickly before we get into it. The production company for the film was 1013 Productions, and it was distributed by 20th Century Fox.
1013.
It came out on June 19th, 1998. I forgot to mention that as well.
1013, is that the number that Chris Carter really likes? It sounds like it would be.
I think it is.
Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
it's all the little cameo. I completely didn't think about that, but yeah, it is. I'm pretty sure that's the time on the clocks at the beginning of the episode and stuff like that.
Yeah. That's it. Yeah.
Good call, though. See, already getting these little tidbits for you that everyone already knows, but that we're figuring out on the fly.
Everyone else is like, well, obviously, us X-Files scrubs coming in with our limited knowledge base.
Hey, but we've got, like, the thing is, our mind's like a blank canvas.
Yeah.
We're going in unsullied by everything else, and we're just giving our raw opinion. So that's the beauty of this podcast. You get to sort of enjoy the wonder when we find out these things, and usually on air.
Yeah. And to be fair, like, this canvas is going to get filled up pretty damn quick after this episode or this film. It's weird. It's not an episode. It is an episode, but it's not an episode. You know what I mean? Like, it certainly gives you the vibe of this 2-hour type episode rather than a film. Yeah.
But again, we'll get into that. Let's get into the story.
Mm-hmm.
So we open up very strangely in 35,000 BC. And it basically looks like the Arctic. It's just like this snowy landscape. And we see 2 cavemen. And they're just sort of running through the forest. I've already gone into X-Files episodes where I'm breaking it down bit by bit. So we'll try and breeze through this. If I'm doing this all the entire episode, this is going to be a long episode. But we see 2 cavemen, basically, and they go into a cave and they discover this alien, basically. But it's not an alien like we've seen before in the show. It's like a monster. And that sounds so weird to say, but like, I could be wrong, but I don't think that's ever been portrayed to us before, has it? No,
it's kind of got like this long claws, and we haven't seen this before. Like, usually we've seen either like the typical grey aliens or this black oil stuff that we don't know what that is, or we didn't know what that was. But yeah, that's what we've seen before. We haven't seen this, whatever this thing is.
Yeah, as opposed to like the humanoid aliens, this is much more like what's the one from the film Alien called
Xenomorph. Yeah.
It was much more along that line, wasn't it?
Even how it, like, later on that we find out how it reproduces and everything, I was getting proper Xenomorph vibes, and this is where it's like, oh, this is like taking on a full on like sci-fi alien. I know it's a sci-fi anyway, but do you know what I mean? Like that kind of full on alien kind of thing. Whereas before it's like a conspiracy. Whereas this is like full on an alien invasion kind of film, I guess. Yeah.
And it certainly ramped up the fear factor, I thought.
Yeah.
Because it's hard to, especially when you don't know what it's meant. Like the whole show is meant to be like not knowing what people's intentions are, not knowing what the aliens' intentions are. It's hard to be afraid of something when you don't actually know what their plan is and what they're trying to do. With something like this, you don't need to know. Yeah. Like, this is just scary. Like, this is scary in itself. The stakes are there to be seen. Do you know what I mean?
The scary thing about X-Files before, other than, like, the Monster of the Weeks, where it's, you know, it's intentionally a scary monster or whatever, hence the name. But whereas before, the conspiracy scariness was that, oh, you could just disappear or somebody could have you killed and everybody would cover it up. And, you know, it's that human fear of, like, the government's going to roll over you and you're not going to have a fight in this, basically. Whereas this, it's just a big scary monster.
I would be like, you can't ignore the setting in which we open, because it is a primal fear. It's instinct. It's fight or fly. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's the sort of fear this alien gives you. So very interesting start, completely out of left field, I thought.
Yeah.
These cavemen get into this fight with this alien. We see this black oil-like substance, which is the blood of the alien, or we assume it's the blood, and it takes over one of the cavemen. Mm-hmm. And then we move on to the same place, but in 1998, in present day.
In Texas, yeah.
In Texas, that's right. And
one thing I noted as well, just before we go on, because obviously I didn't want to bring it up until we've mentioned the black oil from this.
Yeah.
Which, that was interesting that this black oil come out of it. So it's like instantly, fans of the show will go, oh, okay, this is a mythology-like story. But you get that. And also the credits at the beginning where it was just doing like the title screen. There was like black oil under that as well, which I thought was, I initially wrote down, I was like, is that black oil like in the credits? And then when it happened,
didn't notice that.
It was like just underneath, it was just a visual effect where it was like black water basically, but I was just like, oh, I wonder if that's going to be like relating to black oil. And then for it to happen, I was like, oh shit, this is actually a mythology like episode basically.
Yeah, for sure. And I think we'll probably talk about this later on. After, like, in the end of the show. But there was a lot of interesting choices, and I think one of the main things, I know you mentioned to me that one of the main things you was interested in was how accessible this film was going to be to, like, newcomers. And there certainly was choices to be made. You could make this a Monster of the Week, and it's a standalone film. They tend to lean against that, and I think there's a lot of interesting choices that we can discuss, but probably towards the end once we've gone through it all.
Yeah.
So yeah, like I said, we go to the same area in present day, and basically we see a group of boys, and one of the boys falls into the hole. He's obviously scared. This oil gets on him because he finds this skull of, we assume, a caveman, and his eyes go black, and the boys call for help. And when firefighters come, two of them go missing as well. This is all before we see basically this sort of elite force of the government, we assume, turning up, all unmarked vehicles, hazmat suits, all this new tech gear, not telling anybody what's going on. They go in, ignore firefighters' rules and whatnot. They go in, they collect the boy, and then they seal the hole up, and without saying anything, fly this boy off. And the only other noticeable thing really is one of the guys there, I forget his name, the guy that's there with the tie on, but he's looking stressed.
Yeah, I can't remember his name, but yeah, it felt like he was, I did have it written down somewhere, but yeah, he's like the one of the new characters brought into this, and I can't remember, I don't want to spoil anything. I mean, if you've watched it, you probably know, but like, I guess by the end, he's not going to be a recurring character.
I would assume not.
But yeah, it was interesting that we got this sort of another side of the agency that are covering all this stuff up, I guess. So that was interesting.
Yeah, and the scale in which they responded to this, obviously this is a known threat, but obviously they didn't know it was under here. So it does straight away makes you wonder what are they covering up? You know what I mean? Like, you want to know what's going on. And the fact that they left those like firefighters to just die, and they sealed the hole up, took the boy off, and then we get what we've been waiting for. And I want to stop at this point to say production value. I thought straight off the bat, one of the main appeals to this film for me is a simple childlike wonder of just getting to see your favourite characters in a film.
Yeah, I think as soon as you see the black bars like on it, it felt like, oh, this is a big deal. It's so silly because it's all it is an aspect ratio, but as soon as you do that, you're like, ooh, this feels special. You know what I mean?
And that's the thing, like, even like conversations where you get to use multiple camera angles and stuff like that, and like the way they film it is obviously different to TV because you've got more time, you've got more money. I just thought it's so cool. And again, when we're seeing, we jump to Mulder and Scully at this point, and it's just so cool to see them on the big screen. I thought it definitely ramped up how important this episode felt. This story felt, should I say.
I mean, even talking of like budget stuff as well, even like early on, we see the effects of the black oil take over this kid, and in the TV show, we just see that, like, we get the typical thing of the black goes over their eyes, which we'd seen before. With this now, we're actually seeing all these individual, because they're kind of like individual, like, strands, aren't they? Like, different things. It's not like an actual liquid. So they also force their way in. You see them actually, like, going through his skin, and I was like, oh, that's quite well done in terms of, like, visual effects kind of thing. So like budget wise, even there, I'm like, oh, this is going to have a lot of like more explosions and stuff like that, which lives up to that.
They certainly do get some of those ramped in. Some of them I thought they was a little bit too ambitious towards the end, where it just looked like Mulder was sort of in front of a green screen and the world fell apart.
I know what you mean, yeah.
But what can you do? Like that's part and parcel of a film.
Yeah.
So yeah, what are Mulder and Scully doing? Scully is on a building and they're investigating a bomb threat.
Mm-hmm.
We are told Scully's wondering, and she's on the phone to Mulder, why are they investigating this building when it's at the FBI building across the street that the threat was made against? And Mulder's coming up with his whole hokey pokey plans as to why it's on this building.
Hokey pokey, why are you bringing that back?
Well, I didn't know that was unintentional. But yeah, he's coming up with this plan about why they've got to investigate this building, and Scully's like basically saying, this is ridiculous, we're going to get in trouble if this ends up being wrong. But of course they get it right, and Mulder finds this out by going to get a snack from a vending machine, and inexplicably, I may add, just figuring out it's a bomb because it wasn't plugged in.
Yeah. I mean, that's some FBI training, I guess, that you sort of hang on, something's weird here.
You know what? I thought they was going for the joke, because when he started bashing the machine and sort of trying to get because the drinks weren't coming out, and then the music started playing of Mulder investigating, and he looked behind the machine and it was unplugged, and I thought that was the joke. I thought it was going to be a joke about how he's using his investigative powers to find out why there was no power to the machine.
Yeah.
But no, it's basically a huge bomb.
I need this building evacuated and cleared out in 10 minutes. I want you to call the fire department and have them block off the city center in a 1-mile radius around the building.
10 minutes?
Don't think. Just pick up that phone and make it happen.
And the other FBI agents who are on the case, Mr. John Locke from Lost fame.
This completely blew my mind, because initially I thought, oh, it's that character from the episode we'd seen before, and I was like, hang on, he died, didn't he?
He certainly did. He played, I cannot remember his name. I remember it was in Aubrey, the episode.
He was like a copper himself, wasn't he?
Yeah.
So
like a small town cop.
I thought, oh, he's got a promotion, but then I realised very quickly, no, it's not the same character, and I was confused for about all of 2 minutes. I was like, hang on, why is this guy? And then it dawned on me that it's oh, they've just hired him again to just play a different character.
Yeah. So they must. I mean, it's Terry O'Quinn, isn't it? The actor.
Yeah, I do wonder if, because this happens a lot with other characters. They sort of, it'll say in the production notes, oh, they played a character previously, but we don't notice them because it's not John Locke from Lost. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I'm sure this happens all the time. And again, Terry O'Quinn wasn't he wasn't Locke at this point, so he wasn't famous. So I dare say, how many people recognised him when he came on? Probably not many.
No, not really. Just before we carry on as well, there's one bit earlier on in this sort of group of scenes, the Mulder and Scully intro scene, essentially, where they're on the rooftop having the chat. I did think that this scene was perfect for a film if you were a newcomer to the series, because it instantly showcased the stereotypes that they have. So immediately Mulder's going for as you mentioned, his crazy theories. Scully's saying no, there's no scientific, but shooting down his theories, and it immediately made anyone who'd never seen the series before get on side with who these characters are, and that they've got a rapport and all this stuff. I just thought it was a really good introduction if you'd been completely fresh to the series. So I do think it does have some credit as a standalone film for this reason.
Without a doubt, I completely agree.
Yeah.
So like I said, they find this bomb threat, and after saving Mulder from being locked in this room with the bomb, Terry O'Quinn's character, so his name's Darius Mashaud, I believe, he turns up after being at the other building, the wrong building, and he tells everyone to leave. Get out, I can disarm this bomb, but you've got to leave. And Mulder seems hesitant, but they do follow his orders and they all leave. And we get our first kind of mystery element of the show where Mashaud sits and waits for the bomb to explode. Mulder does try at one point to get back into the building, but Scully drags him out, says there's no time, they got to get away. So not only do we get our first mystery of the episode as to why Mashaw's just accepted his fate, we also get our first big explosion of the episode as we see this building just erupt from this bomb.
Yeah, it's a huge explosion. I mean, it's bigger than they even have a pyro budget for, because they have to use some like visual effects. But I still think it looked pretty decent for the time. Like, I'm not going to judge it on what effects you could get today, but I did think it looked pretty decent. The part where he was sat like just looking at the bomb, I was a bit confused initially. I was like, does he know that he can't do this in time? And he's just sort of like, I didn't get it initially that he's been sent there to make sure this goes off, which is obviously what we find out is the case later on. I just thought he just ran out of time and didn't have enough time to do it. So that was my assumption, which was funny because I made a note earlier on where Mulder was like, no, I can't leave you to it. And I was just like, just let him get on with it, Mulder. You've got 14 minutes to do this. Apparently it's very difficult, so just leave him to it. But I didn't pick up on that until later on, and then it's obvious that he was sent there to make sure it went off. But basically, it's a nice sort of like start to the mystery of what we find out more about this. But it was a cool scene as well, just for the big explosion. Definitely, I completely agree.
So we sort of move on to the next act of the film, and Mulder and Scully are having to go through all these inquiries at the FBI. And again, at this point, don't forget, the X-Files is no longer a thing. So they're going through all these inquiries. Skinner is on the board, but he's just as a sort of an assist, basically, rather than the actual sort of their boss, I assume.
Yeah.
And basically the message, without getting into like the nitty-gritty of it, the message is that they could be pinned for some of the blame for this, because not only were they not in the right place, but 4 people did die. They mention Mashaw, but they also mention 2 helicopter pilots and a child as well that died.
They mentioned... Did they say helicopter? I thought they specifically said firefighters.
Oh, were they firefighters?
I'm sure.
I thought they let the firefighters down in the hole.
Well, no, I think they took them out and then put their bodies in... Well, all but one, I think, because the one they keep, don't they? For later
I thought
on.
that the firefighters left in the hole. Fair enough, but it was basically these people from this Texas encounter with the the alien.
Yeah.
So, but Mulder's like, basically they mentioned that why would you have looked for it? It's something that you've missed because they were dead already, but they... Oh, no. That's later on.
Yeah.
So they mentioned these 4 bodies were the thing, even though they evacuated the building, which they can't really understand. But that evening, Mulder is approached whilst in an alley relieving himself. He is approached by Alvin Kurtzweil, new character we've not met before.
No.
Basically plays the role of Deep Throat in this film, to be honest.
Essentially, he's the informer of this piece. Did you see what Mulder was pissing on?
It was an Independence Day poster, wasn't it?
I was like, is that a dig? I don't know what that... Because I assume, didn't Fox make Independence Day as well? I'm sure they did.
I've got no idea, to be honest.
I thought it was like... Initially, I thought it's studios against studio kind of thing, like little childish stuff. And then I thought, hang on a bit. Like, I think it was just like a little joke, to be fair, more than anything, by the end of it.
Like, even could be like just foreshadowing, do you know what I mean? Like, the plot of Independence Day isn't that far from this.
Yeah,
so.
true, yeah. I guess so, yeah. I did like the scene as well earlier on where he's just talking to the bartender.
So, what do you do?
What do I do? I'm the key figure in an ongoing government charade. The plot to conceal the truth about the existence of extraterrestrials. It's a global conspiracy, actually, with key players and the highest levels of power, and that reaches down into the lives of every man, woman, and child on this planet. So, of course, no one believes me. I'm an annoyance to my superiors, a joke to my peers. They call me Spooky. Spooky Mulder, whose sister was abducted by aliens when he was just a kid and who now chases after little green men with a badge and a gun, shouting to the heavens or anyone who will listen that the fix is in and that the sky is falling. And when it hits, it's gonna be the shitstorm of all time.
Well, I would say that about does it, Spooky.
Does what?
Well, looks like 86 is your lucky number.
Just telling her everything that's happened to him, and she's just like,
Yeah.
cool, okay.
Yeah, I'm going to cut you off.
Yeah, basically.
But yeah, so as I say, he basically plays the exposition guy. He plays Deep Throat. He is the informant that's going to tell Mulder where to look and where to go. And he explains to Mulder that that the victims that was found in the building, apart from Michaud, were already dead. Mm-hmm. That's why Mulder didn't look for them, is because they weren't alive there to be evacuated to begin with. And he believes that the whole bomb itself was to cover up how these people died. Mm-hmm. But funnily enough, Mulder doesn't believe him. Mulder basically calls him crazy and walks away, which I thought was, again, a great continuation of this sort of story of Mulder not really following his own sort of beliefs in this.
Yeah. It was sort of nice to see that sort of thread was still in there, even though it's afterwards, like, because he's sort of got his beliefs back again, but he's still a bit like...
To an extent, I think this film, sorry to cut you off, but I think this film is the end of that arc of him getting his beliefs back.
Yeah, by the end, there's no way he can't not believe it. But no, it as well, I think having the X-Files shut down on him would have probably disenfranchised him a little bit, so I guess there's sort of that as well. Definitely.
Mulder is, however, concerned enough that he decides to go to the morgue to investigate these bodies himself, and he finds that a government official has banned access to these, but with some nice sweet talking and basically just sort of running circles around this security guard. He manages to get into one of the morgues so that Scully can investigate the body. And even though that there's been a declaration that they died from the explosion, once they look at the body's like, I don't even know how to describe it. It's like see-through, and it's like sort of gelatinous now. It's really strange, but basically it looks very strange, and Scully determined an autopsy hasn't been performed here. Mm-hmm. She does not think this was an explosion that killed these guys.
Yeah, and
which we of course know is obviously right.
Yeah, exactly. We start, basically the characters are sort of led to believe what we already know, I guess, now. So yeah, it's again, this was sort of the part where you kind of think, oh, okay, this is related to this, and it sort of confirms all that. And some really good practical effects here, because it did look disgusting, this sort of body, this gelatinous body that we had there.
Well, we get a nice continuation of that in the next scene where we see Cigarette Smoking Man again, another return. Good to see. I don't know why, again, just seeing him like with the helicopter, his hair flowing in the wind. I was like, he's on film. This is cool. Like, I know it sounds so whimsical and childish, but like just seeing them on the film is cool. You know what I mean? And I don't think that should be ignored.
There's a scene later on where I was kind of having like, obviously not to the extent, but you get that sort of like cheer in the cinema moment. There's characters that appear, and I'm pretty sure you can guess who. Where I was like, oh shit, it's those guys. And
definitely, I know who you're on about.
It's like, again, obviously they'll show up because it's X-Files, but it was just interesting that they're on the film as well. And I just imagine like at that moment I would sort of put myself, and again with this one, and any time a character makes an appearance, I put myself into the headspace of somebody who's been a massive X-Files fan, who'd gone to see this at the cinemas at the time. I imagine that was like some kind of like, a really feel-good feeling, you know what I mean, with a lot of this stuff.
Definitely. I sometimes wonder, I mean, I know we spoke about this last week a little bit, but there is something to it about having like a finale to a show come out on film like this, because imagine being, I know we talk about it all the time, and I know it's probably boring everyone, but it's no we're not hiding the fact that one of our favourite shows is Lost. Imagine the ending to Lost was something that we could have gone to the cinema and experience with a lot of other people that love the same thing we do.
Yeah.
That would be pretty interesting.
It's kind of like, I know it's not the exact same, but that Avengers feeling, like, this is like the culmination of something that's been going on for years and years and years, and then you're in the cinema experiencing this, like, feel-good moment. Sorry, I've got a frog in my throat talking about it. You're experiencing this, like, feel-good moment at the same time everybody else is, and it's kind of like going to like a football game or any kind of sports game or show like that, and there's a big event that happens, like, you know, somebody scores, and then
it's a shared experience that makes it more special.
Exactly, and that's what I feel like this would have been like for X-Files fans, is that kind of like, oh, it's cigarette smoking man, you know what I mean? Like he's back, and I just feel like this. You'd have had a lot of moments in this, and with the amount of like reveals that we get in it as well, I imagine it must have been a really big event for X-Files fans. I'd be interested to know if anybody who's listening did actually see it at the time it came out. That'd be interesting to sort of know what their sort of experience
what it was like.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, get in touch and let us know if anyone did go to any of these screenings. But yeah, cigarette smoking man, he goes to Texas. And we see one of the firefighters that was stuck in there. And that doctor from the beginning, basically, we see that they've transformed this hole into like this mini lab. And it's all sealed off. And he goes down and they're cooling it down because this firefighter has an organism, an alien of some sort, living inside his body. Mm-hmm. And again, anyone who's watched Alien kind of gets the gist here. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's not. I like this because it's mysterious enough that it keeps you hooked, but also everyone's on the same page. Everyone knows what's going on here.
Yeah. You basically get the trope of, oh, it's an alien living inside something to get sustenance, I suppose. And so you're kind of on the page. I don't think it needs too much explaining, just because we've had stuff like it, I guess.
Exactly. So the doctor asks cigarette smoking man, should I kill this? And what should I do? And cigarette smoking man says, no, we need to test the virus. We've got this virus that we need to test. This is a great opportunity to test it. If the virus doesn't work, burn the body like the rest. So this isn't a one-off occasion. And you get the feeling that the people involved in this take these opportunities to test this vaccine that we know they have, and we don't know. Well, last we heard was that they were working on a vaccine. So it appears that they've got some versions of it that they don't know whether it works or not. Yeah.
And I think they've sort of tried to test it on, what was her name now? Mrs. X, Marita. Didn't they test it on her, and they didn't think it was having much effect? So now we're...
But it did sort of cure it later. But again, we're never really sort of let into how well it works, or whether it fully heals, or what it does. Like, at this point, when there's something inside your body living there, does it cure that? We don't know at this point.
Yeah, exactly. So it's just, again, another good point to sort of test this, I suppose. So, yeah.
Exactly. However, if you're going to keep someone like this alive to test them, make sure that the organism doesn't break out of that body and kill the doctor running the test.
I mean, yeah, that would be a good plan.
This was one of my favourite scenes. I thought this was genuinely terrifying. I thought it was scary. Yeah. This thing breaks out, and the doctor sort of tries to scramble out and then realises where it is and tries to sort of examine it. He has the vaccine in his hand. But this monstrous alien manages to get around him, just tears him apart. And then the crux of the scene is this doctor getting back to the ladders with his face and his neck torn apart. I thought the visuals looked amazing. And he looks up to see the other scientists, without any remorse whatsoever, shut him in. They know their job. They know what they have to do. It's been breached. We're shutting this over. Not only do they shut the door, they just leave him there, and they build a park on top of this hole. They completely get rid of any evidence. I thought this told you exactly where the government's priorities lie. And I just thought it was a genuinely scary scene. I thought this was really good.
Yeah, I really like this bit. Just because, again, whenever you have like sort of a scary scene, you sort of put yourself in those shoes. And not only are you being attacked by this monster with like claws, teeth that can rip you apart with its bare hands, you're then being screwed over and buried alive by the people that you were working with, and it's...
And the hopelessness
exactly.
of, like, when that door closes, like, I'm the same as you. I couldn't help but think, well, what would you do? There's nothing you can do in that situation.
Yeah, you're dead, and it's just, basically, at that point, it's to fight this thing and try and out-survive it and then die in the hole, or... Yeah, it's just, a horrible situation. But again, it sort of shows you just how callous this organisation is. They don't care about the individual person. It's all about this greater picture, basically.
Yeah, and the fact that their mission statement is so strong that these everyday scientists just follow orders, even when faced with something like that, it's crazy. I thought this was a very effective scene. Like you mentioned about the bomb disposal scene with Mulder and Scully, I thought this was effective in the same way, but for the antagonists.
Yeah, exactly. It gets them over really well, yeah.
And now we go into what I like to call film X-Files, things that you wouldn't get to see in an episode of X-Files. Mulder and Scully travel to this place. They realise that something's been covered up, that there's a brand new park there for no reason. And some of the boys that was present, I mean, they're not as... They've got new bikes. They've been bribed into keeping secret, but they are still kids, and they end up telling them which way they went. And so they give chase in a car, and it leads to this really great scene of, like, them just trying to figure out where to go. Mulder going off-road, where a train goes past. They're looking for, like, these unmarked trucks, and a train goes past with, like, these unmarked tanker trucks on. And they're fucking going through, like, the dirt roads. And I just thought this is the sort of thing that you don't get to see in X-Files episodes. This is, like, the things that happen in between the scenes. This is what a film gives you. These sort of exciting little transitions that you can go through, and I thought this was really cool.
The transition shots in between it, because literally with the TV show they wouldn't bother wasting their budget on something like that, so it's this cool sort of narrative device to get to there. I did think there was a good part of this as well. Before we start that, I don't know if it's in your notes later on, but
the roads.
No, the bit before that where basically we're in England. Because it's just right before this. There's two things about it. It's interesting, one, that they're in England. I thought, that's cool, because it didn't even dawn on me. Well Manicured Man is British. I just didn't even think of that. And then when I saw him there, I was like, oh yeah, of course they'd go to his home at some point.
I am terrible at picking English accents out in American films. I don't know why. If I'm watching an American film, English people just blend into the American people for me. I'm terrible for it.
I didn't realise he was British until literally we see him sat there and I'm like, oh, of course he's British. Like, he listens to his accent. Yeah. And then, like, we get this London meetup of, like, the syndicate, and they're all... It was quite a bigger syndicate, I noticed as well, in that scene. There's a lot more people in this room than there usually is. So I don't know if this is, like, the international contingent of the syndicate. They're talking about, like, what they're going to do about all this stuff that's happened. And then they mentioned that Mulder knows. And then they said, well, we're going to have to take out what's important to him. And then it cuts straight to Scully standing, like, and I was like, they're going to try and kill Scully? To which, I mean, they basically do try and do later on, by not on purpose, but basically that's essentially what they tried to do.
Yeah, it seems to. There's also this... I'm so glad you brought that to my attention, because I completely forgot about this scene. There's also an underlying sort of storyline here of the syndicate not basically feeling betrayed by the people they work for.
Yes, yeah.
Because it's mentioned, like, this thing that's sort of... This alien thing that's coming out and living inside the hosts' bodies, and then basically killing them as they are born. And there's a few mentions, not so explicit that, like, it gives you all the answers, but there's a few mentions of, oh, well, then they've lied to us and they've betrayed us, and they're using us for this purpose. And what we think, we're trying to sort of do a vaccine behind their back, but now it's more imperative than ever that we get this sorted, because otherwise it isn't just our minds and our freedom that's going to go, it's our lives.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, they explicitly say that, like, well, initially we thought, oh, it's just going to affect, like, the general public, as you mentioned, and they now feel like, oh shit, we're actually in the firing line of this as well. And it just shows you that the level they're at. They're like, as long as we're okay and we can sort of palm it off onto other people, that's fine. But then they sort of, it shows you that even Well Manicured Man later on, he's not a good guy at all. He even says when he's doing what he does later on, I'm just looking out for my family because I don't want my family to end up like this. I thought it was interesting. We get a lot of information here on like what we'd sort of guessed anyway, that the Syndicate were working with these sort of colonizers, I guess. Just a lot. It's
very interesting because it shows how panicked the Syndicate are by the situation, but also it is the most information we've got from them, and so that did make a fascinating choice. And what I was going to mention was in this big chase scene. I know it's just like a little metaphor and whatnot, but there is a point where they stop in the car and they don't know which way to go, whether to go left or right.
Yeah.
And Mulder thinks left and Scully goes right, and so Mulder just drive straight down the middle on this dirt road.
Yeah.
And I love that because it's just such a little metaphor, but the idea that they work best when they go towards a shared objective. Do you know what I mean? Exactly, I don't. That's obviously what they were going for, and it really plays off well.
Yeah, I like that scene as well. Yeah, it just shows that they've grown so much that they're now, they are this sort of team working on this, and we see this a lot later on as well. But yeah, that they sort of meet in the middle, literally in this case. So yeah.
So they follow these tankers, and they follow this train to this facility in the middle of nowhere, and it's basically, as they go over the ridge, they see like these two glowing white domes in the distance, surrounded by corn crops. And as they go through it, they do manage to get closer to this thing and actually get inside one of these domes to figure out what's going on here. And there's this buzzing, and they think it might be electricity or some sort of power surge. And Mulder figures out just at a moment too late that it's bees. And we have seen bees, and we know from like little production notes and whatnot that bees do make a reappearance in the episode. Millions and millions of bees attack them, swarm them. They manage to get out unscathed,
which is a miracle.
Crazy, absolutely insane. I mean, I know bees aren't really like they're not aggressive unless attacked, but there's no way they don't feel attacked with two guys swarming, and you know what I mean. I do
think they're they do mention that they're Africanized honeybees, which are the ones that like sort of hunt you down. Basically, they're like proper aggressive. So I guess that's sort of like the vector that they're using to spread this disease. But yeah, I did find it funny that they didn't do that. I also like this scene because fans of the show, soon as they realise it's bees, are like, oh shit, like they're fucked now, like they're in so much trouble. I imagine if you'd never watched X-Files, you're just like, oh, it's a lot of bees. Like, what's this all about? Like, it's so like weird. Like, if you don't know what the bees signify. But yeah, I just thought that was an interesting scene for that reason. Also, it was shot really well, just like this stark white sort of environment, and then just the two of them as this like swarm is swarming all around them. I just thought it was quite visually appealing.
Yeah, it was a good shot, and then they escaped from this. And then there's I thought it was a little bit of a strange scene where it felt like they just did it because they could now in a film, but there's a scene where they're in the cornfields and two helicopters chase them down with spotlights.
Yeah.
And it goes on for probably 5 minutes longer than it should, because they're just sort of, they lose each other, they find each other, nothing happens. Yeah, these helicopters just disappear, and then it's just like, oh, cool, that was 5 minutes of the film that we won't get back. But it's one of those where I think it's a cool shot. Do you know what I mean? That like they just decided to include.
Yeah, I mean, really, you could probably got away with that with just them running away in the cornfields with the helicopters chasing them. So yeah, it did feel a bit like, how long is this going on for?
Honestly, it was so. Yeah. It just felt like Jeepers Creepers at one point. It was just like, okay, cool.
It was a strange choice, but again, like I said, I feel like if you brought helicopters in to do a scene, you're like, oh, can we not make this a bit longer, like to make get some work out of the helicopters? I don't
know. So after all of this, we see Mulder and Scully, assumingly, but mainly Scully, return to the FBI headquarters to go through a second part of this hearing. she's obviously late. It's hinted at that she's been up at well, yes, she definitely has been. She's been up all night. She's gone from Dallas to Washington in overnight, and she's late, but she managed to get there. This is one thing I did want to mention as well, talking about whether it's accessible to people that haven't seen the show. The one thing they don't really deal with well, and I understand because it's a very difficult thing to include, but the one thing they don't deal with well is that the fact that there is no X-Files.
Yeah, they never really mention that. It's
apart from like the last singer that Scully gives to this sort of woman at the inquiry, where she says there's no investigative means of the FBI that willing to do this because the X-Files aren't there.
Do you know what? They could have got around this so easily, just thinking about it. I don't know if this would have like ruined the film or like not ruined it, but it would have changed how it felt. But right at the beginning, just have like a bit of like, you have the crawl text, not like literally Star Wars style scroll up screen, but literally just some like white text on the screen to just say, "Oh, the X-Files have been disbanded," da da da, and then you could. Then again, because they started in the BC, I don't know where that would have fitted because you'd have to start there, do that text, then do that. I don't know, so maybe that's why. But I do feel like a little bit of explaining like that the X-Files are split up at the beginning might have helped.
Yeah, because they definitely don't. They don't explain it. And so, for example, for this scene where Scully is trying to sort of explain what she's seen, she doesn't have like the answers yet, but she is trying to sort of stick up for Mulder and tell the truth along that sort of line. But then she eventually gets transferred to a different department. This whole scene feels a little bit strange because it's like, well, why would she be transferred if she was part of the X-Files? Yeah. And I do think, as an episode, as a continuation of the series, like we've been watching, this was fine. Like this worked for me, and I was like, I don't need any more. Like this makes sense for the track that we're on, and Scully being transferred over does make sense.
Yeah.
But I couldn't help but think anyone who's watching this film without the context, it doesn't really track as to why things like this are happening.
Yeah, I mean, there's part of me that thinks, I guess this is me thinking this, that I'd be like, I probably wouldn't have gone to the cinemas to watch an X-Files film if I hadn't watched the X-Files. So I do wonder if they sort of think that, but also there's no way they would have greenlit a film thinking, oh, it's just going to have the same people who watch the TV show turn up. Like they would have all day expected there to be casual people to come in. So it is strange that they don't sort of tackle that, I suppose, but again, it didn't really hamper my enjoyment of the film one bit, but
exactly for us as our own personal experience, I was absolutely fine with it. So
yeah.
And quite frankly, as long as I'm happy, that's all that matters.
Exactly. Yeah.
One thing to note in this inquiry, we do see a bee in like the lapel of Scully's jacket.
Mm-hmm.
And so we know she's going to get stung at some point.
Yeah.
So in the next scene, this is heartbreaking.
I know. Yeah.
Mulder is absolutely gutted. He's devastated that Scully's been transferred and that it's all falling apart. They're trying to keep them quiet. And they share this moment, and I thought we was about to get the kiss.
I wrote in all caps, fucking bees. Yeah, I mean, it literally, like, you get this bit before where she's basically, Scully's basically saying,
I already gave Skinner my letter of resignation.
You can't quit now, Scully.
I can, Mulder. I debated whether or not even to tell you in person.
We are close to something here. We're on the verge.
You're on the verge, Mulder. Please don't do this to me.
After what you saw last night, after all you've seen, you can just walk away?
I have. I did. It's done.
I need you on this, Scully.
You don't need me, Mulder. You never have. I've just held you back. I gotta go.
You want to tell yourself that so you can quit with a clear conscience, you can, but you're wrong.
Why did they assign me to you in the first place, Mulder? To debunk your work, to rein you in, to shut you down.
But you saved me. As difficult and as frustrating as it's been sometimes, your goddamn strict rationalism and science have saved me 1,000 times over. You've kept me honest. You made me a whole person. I owe you everything. Scully, and you owe me nothing. I don't know if I want to do this alone. I don't even know if I can. And if I quit now, they win.
And then, we get this really tender moment between the two. I can't even remember, like, off the top of my head, I can't remember what they're basically just saying how much of a team they are and how much they can't they can't live with one another.
Yeah, it's kind of just a moment. It's it's one of those where, like, they sort of just stare at each other and just start leaning in, like, it's just a natural moment for them. Yeah. And then this bee, like, literally right at the last second, cuts off the kiss. And it's really quite sad because Mulder sort of, like, tries to get the bee away, but then quite quickly realizes this is actually serious. Mm-hmm. And I really enjoyed this scene because as Scully sort of starts to react to whatever this bee is sort of put inside her, injected her with, the doctor in her is basically sort of listing out the descriptions. Yeah. And I thought this was a twofold really good, well done. One, because it's great Scully character moment. This is exactly what Scully would do. Like, she's just so switched on. She's sensible. She just works through symptom by symptom of what's going on with her body. And B, great exposition for us. We know exactly what's going on in the situation. We know how serious it is. I thought this was really, really quite clever.
I made a note of this as well because I love that she just gives out all these sort of so like she's saying I've lost like this sense, this is gone, and it is her just saying this to Mulder, so he relays it to the paramedics, so like he can help them. But obviously at the same time, it's serving a point to the audience as well. I thought this was an interesting sort of few seconds of this scene, I suppose,
especially when we've seen her do this millions of times in autopsy rooms. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? We've seen her give this exact same sort of type of methodical description of what's happened. I just thought this was really, really good. And I thought, I am going to talk about the film as a whole here. I thought the film is littered with these sort of things where, for fans of the show and for fans of the series, it's just so satisfying to see the characters treated with such respect. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. There's a part later on where it's my only gripe of the film, where is the one point where I think it doesn't. But other than that, I feel like this film does a lot of service to the characters in here, especially the main characters from like the TV series. So I have one gripe, but I'll get to that later on.
Oh, I'm looking forward to hearing what that is because I can't think of it. So Scully collapses. Mulder calls an ambulance, but something's not right with these paramedics. They won't let Mulder come, and as he goes round to try and knock on the window to sort of get their attention, he gets shot in the head, like point blank range. It does miss him. We see like it's sort of scraped the side of his head. He's got blood all down the side of his head, but he's left on the floor to die as Scully gets kidnapped, basically.
Yeah. I feel like the cover-up agents or whatever they are, they've really taken no holds barred in this series or in this film. Because like before, like they'd sort of just do something and just Mulder would be like chasing after him. Or this time they full on trying to execute Mulder. They've never gone that far, I don't think. Like I know people have shot at him, but he never felt like he was in direct danger of dying. You know what I mean? Whereas in this case, it's like, it's only by plot armor really this has grazed off his head.
You know what, that's probably my only gripe with the whole, and this isn't just the film, this is like the storyline of the show up until this point, is that I understand they've given us reasons as to why they can't get rid of Mulder. Like he would become a martyr, that his cause would then become a rallying cry for people around him, but there's only so far I can believe that before I just can't think of why the Syndicate wouldn't go, okay, we'll just kill him, make it look like an accident, and just cover it up. Because they've done that with hundreds of people. Like, every time Mulder finds something out, they kill an entire lab and just completely destroy it, and it's never seen again. Yeah. And I can't... There is a bit of me that goes, it doesn't really make sense why they don't just kill Mulder and just get rid of him. Yeah. Like, Mulder... For example, let's take this film. And I know I'm going wildly off track here, but just follow the thought train. Mm-hmm. Mulder goes to the airport and voluntarily buys plane tickets to the Antarctica. There is nothing stopping them from just killing Mulder right there and then and going, well, he went to Antarctica, he must have got lost.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Do you know what I mean? There's no reason not to kill him at that point. And so, it's plot armor. You can sort of throw it over to one side. It doesn't really make a difference. But that is the only thing where I'm like, it doesn't really make sense that they're just so happy just to let this guy continue to cause problems for 5 years.
That's the thing. In this situation, I thought it was the first time they've actually tackled it head on, and just thought, no, we'll just kill him. So it is interesting that we've gone down sort of. They've stopped pulling their punches, and again, what you said, it makes sense now that they probably just try and take him out of the equation. But yeah.
So the next scene, we open up to the familiar eyes opening up on screen, and very Lost-like if you're a Lost fan.
We need to stop this.
But instead of a beautiful sunny beach that we see and palm trees, we see something more beautiful. We see the 3 lone gunmen staring back at us.
Yeah, this is where I sort of, I didn't, in my living room on my own, I didn't punch the air, but mentally I was like, yeah!
This was great to let them have their moments.
I loved in this intro as well that he mentioned, he calls them the Cowardly Lion, Toto, and like referencing that. And I was like, I'm sure we had this conversation not long ago.
I think... I didn't have the same reaction as you. I thought, this is pretty cool. I had the punch air moment in my head when I noticed that the lone gunman and Skinner was in the same room. I don't know why, but there's something so incredibly exciting about having the lone gunman and Skinner interact with each other.
Yeah, it's a hell of a worlds collide moment.
It really is. Like, even though we've seen them both, and they're both psychos in the same show. But I want to see a conversation between these 3. I reckon Skinner would literally, glasses off, just rubbing the temples on his forehead, and, just so fed up of everything that they're saying.
I mean, Mulder winds him up, so imagine Mulder times 3.
I'd love to see. I hope we do. I don't think it's something that we'll ever get to see, but this was as close as we've got so far, so I very much enjoyed it. But they need a plan. That Mulder is guarded by everybody. He can't leave. Skinner, and I like this as well, Skinner knows that something's not right here, that something's happened. He knows that Mulder's in danger, and he's happy to help Mulder in whatever way he can.
Yeah.
And there's only one way that Mulder can be helped, and that is if Byers gets naked. That's the only way.
Basically, yeah. That's the thing. We get the transition where it's like, I'll need your clothes, and then obviously we see him sneak out. We don't see the awkward 2 minutes where Byers and Mulder both strip naked in a room with 3 other guys, and they all have to swap clothes, and it's like, this is a bit strange. But hey, Skinner's been in the army. You know what I mean? He's seen a hell of a lot of things, so I don't feel like this is anything new to him. This is just Sunday to him.
You know what I genuinely love? This is the lone gunman. This is their MO. This is what they do. They like to feel involved. They like to feel like special agents.
Yeah.
And so there's 2 of them escort him out while Byers pretends to be Mulder in the bed, and they sort of get him out there. And even the way they're walking, they think that they're the coolest men in the world at that point. But what I really do love is Skinner going along with the plan, as one of the agents that are guarding Mulder looks through the window and sees Skinner on his phone next to Mulder. And I love the fact that Skinner's gone against the rules.
Yeah, basically.
He's going against the book to help Mulder out. And again, just little bits like that. I'm like, that's pretty cool. And I like that sort of little nod to the fans that, oh, hang on, Skinner is on their side, even though he is one of the guys in this inquiry for the average cinema goer.
Yeah, that's the thing. We've seen this all as the time's gone on. Skinner's been more helpful and on their side. So yeah, it's nice that we see this in the film as well. This continuation of it.
Yeah. So we're sort of getting towards the end of the second act, if you will. Mulder is going back to what's his name again now?
The begins with a K, doesn't it?
I forgot his name. Kurzweil.
Yeah, that's it.
Kurzweil.
That's it.
So yeah, Mulder is going back to see them, and he has been back a few times already. And we're already seeing one of the earlier scenes where they go back and the police are raiding his apartment because they've got a tip that he is grooming young children. And when Mulder finally sort of does catch up with them. They say that Kurzweil says they've done this before. They're trying to discredit me and stuff like that, and this is the way they do it. So we know he's going. There's a reason that he's paranoid, basically.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he's sort of had this all his life, and yeah, I mean, he should have been even more careful.
Yeah. Well, so basically, Mulder's going back, and what he finds is the well-manicured man. For what it seems to me, is loading the dead body of of Kurzweil into the car.
Yeah, that's the impression I got. We didn't see it, but that's the only thing I came away from this thinking.
Yeah.
He's very honest with it to Mulder. He doesn't outright say it, but he might as well have done.
Well, this is the thing. So he tells Mulder to get into the car with him, and this is the first time they've ever interacted, I believe.
I thought that. I wrote a note then saying if they interacted before, but I think the only people he's interacted with that would have been part of this, I guess, is Cigarette Smoking Man and Deep Throat, I think. So
this is the thing, and I think even with, like, if you look at, like, the way Cigarette Smoking Man has his relationship with the rest of the syndicate, Cigarette Smoking Man is obviously the guy that gets his hands dirty, and we've seen that in his story, in his sort of that episode where we had that sort of all of his backstory.
Yeah.
He's the guy that gets his hands dirty, so the others don't have to, but the others kind of don't like his approach. So very strange to see the well-manicured man turn up and actually sort of face-to-face with Mulder. But we find out why, and it's because he's going against the syndicate.
Yeah.
He basically gives us the majority of the answers that we've been looking for the past 5 seasons, which was great. I loved it.
I wrote the note down here as well. This is the biggest info dump we've had. This is everything we've been waiting for in this 2-minute limo ride that he has.
It's brilliant. He basically reveals that, and it takes a while for Mulder to sort of trust him, but he's so forthright, and he basically just turns on and says, listen, we are helping this colonization of aliens. We've been lied to. It looks like this sort of black oil or whatever that we've been trying to work on a vaccine for actually is a parasite of some sort that uses humans as hosts. It could be fatal for the world. It could be disastrous. We've gone in over our heads. I've got to look after my kids. And that's basically what it comes down to. He turns on the syndicate, gives Mulder all the answers that he's looking for, because he wants Mulder to disrupt this plan. Yeah. He knows Mulder's one of the only people who has the information and has the willpower to do this. If he helps Mulder, maybe there's a chance that the human race doesn't get destroyed. And as well as that, his children.
Yeah, exactly. And he mentions as well, didn't he? He gives him he mentions a weak vaccine. Yeah. He says to this, so he gives that to Mulder, which is interesting. I like that he called it a weak vaccine, because it leaves that sort of like open-endedness, even by the end of it, that like, oh, has this fully worked? How well has this worked? And so that sort of leaves some possibilities as well at the end.
Yeah. He also gives him Scully's location as well, the coordinates for her, and he basically says, you need to go and save her. This will also provide answers. And then he kind of just gives a nod to Mulder and says, even the fact that I'm giving you this information now, I know I'm in trouble. I know this is bad for me. And he looks over at the driver, and he knows that there's eyes and ears everywhere. He knows that people are going to find out about this. And so he kills the driver of the limo as he pulls a gun out. You think it's against Mulder, and he kills the driver of the limo, tells Mulder to go get Scully, use the vaccine, follow up, find out what's going on. And then as Mulder walks away from the car and he thinks he's still unsure about what the intentions are, the car blows up, and well-manicured man, either through his own means or be it the syndicate, or whether he just thinks that I'm dead anyway, I might as well finish it on my own terms. I'm not sure. But he dies, and it's basically a car bomb.
Yeah. I mean, this is the first big character death of this as well. I mean,
this is pretty huge.
Yeah.
I thought this scene, I thought it was fantastic. I thought it was such a great way, because it didn't feel undeserved. Info dumps can often feel undeserved.
Yeah.
In the sense that you're watching it and you can sometimes how many times have we been at the cinema where obviously that sort of thing happens, but the audience needs to know the information. But sometimes you can just roll your eyes because you go, oh, this wouldn't happen in real life. Whereas actually, this feels deserved. This feels like it's a guy that's realised the consequences of what he's been involved in, and Mulder would be the logical person to go to to try and get that stopped. Yeah, this feels completely deserved, and it feels like a good way to give us the answers we've been looking for.
Yeah, it never felt like like just full on exposition right at the camera, which as you mentioned, a lot of stuff does feel like that. And obviously it's a needed part in films, and especially in this, where it's a continuation of a series.
Yes.
So it's definitely needed, but it never feels artificial. It just feels like a natural sort of part of the story, which is what you can always hope for when you have to do these big exposition scenes. So, I thought this was brilliant, and we now have basically a much, much clearer picture going into Series 6 of what the hell is going on now.
I am very much looking forward to the new season after this film, I've got to say.
Yeah, it really did heighten my sort of my excitement. I mean, I was already looking forward to it anyway with the end of season 5 and the destroying of the X-Files. But knowing all of this information now going into it, it's like, whoa, next series could be absolutely massive, really, in terms of what we find out. So, yeah,
definitely. Now we get onto the final act of this film, and I was very shocked to find that we go to Antarctica.
Yeah.
And Mulder's driving this big sort of snowmobile down the road. This is obviously, it becomes clear this is where the coordinates lead him. Again, I thought it was great that it's this whole sequence, and I will get into it a little bit more in depth. In the show, we know Mulder and Scully will do anything for each other.
Yeah.
And that means investigating a case where they're putting themselves in danger or, that sort of stuff. They'll happily do that for one another. Mulder's literally John McClane action hero in this scene. And it's just the lengths he goes to get Scully back and to keep her safe. I thought that was really... I loved it. I really enjoyed that sort of side of things.
See, this is where my first gripe at the film...
You didn't
my
like it?
First major gripe. It's not that I didn't like that, because I did like that aspect, because it really does show that they do care about each other immensely. Literally, he is going to the end of the earth together.
Yeah, exactly.
My one gripe was that because, obviously, they needed some reason for this, sort of... set piece to go to the Antarctica and everything. They chose Scully to sort of take out the equation, and it felt like they've taken Scully out of the final third of the film. You know what I mean? Because she's largely an inactive character towards the end, and it just made me if it was a normal episode, it wouldn't bother me because this happens all the time. It goes back and forth, it's whatever. But because it was the film and this is a big thing, it felt a bit like, oh, they've just reverted Scully to a damsel in distress right at the end, just so we've got a plot device to get to there. And I was like, it didn't ruin the film. I'll say now, I really enjoyed this film by the end of it. So it didn't ruin it at all. But it was that one wrinkle where I was like, it'd been nice if they were both gunning it to the end. You know what I mean? Both were sort of equal sort of measures, I guess, by the end. And I mean, Scully has a sort of moment when she sort of wakes back up, but she needs to essentially be saved by Mulder. And that was my only sort of gripe with it, if you know what I mean.
I completely understand, to be honest, especially I've mentioned this season more than any other season has made me realise that Scully's my favourite character. And so it would have been nice to have a little bit more of her in the climax of the show. I do agree with that.
Because this essentially is the big action set piece at the end where everything happens, but it just felt a bit like, it's a shame that it's just Mulder, you know what I mean? In this bit. But again, it didn't ruin the film for me at all. It was just my one thing where I was just like, oh, that'd have been nice, but again, it's just one of those things. Yeah,
you understand the plot device, but
yeah,
it would have been nice to find a different way around it.
Essentially, yeah. But as I'm saying, it didn't really ruin the film for me at all. It's just that one niggle.
Yeah. I will try. I mean, it goes back and forth a lot, so I'm going to try and just sort of quickly get through this sort of what happens in this sort of Antarctica act. Mulder does find a base, and he unintentionally finds like this sort of vent system that like he falls through, that he manages to get inside the base without being detected.
Yeah, this is terrifying as well, because he just like, he falls into it and he's like, oh, I guess it's through here, and he just crawls through a random tunnel. I was like, oh, yeah, no way would it do this, just crawling through some Antarctic tundra. Like, no way.
And also, it's very much the vent on the Death Star, isn't it? Where it's like, why is this tunnel just leading out to nowhere? Why is it not protected at all?
Yeah. I mean, yeah. I think every sci-fi film has always got that one conceit where you go, hang on, why did no one do this? And it's like, look, we need it away in sight.
But Mulder gets some interesting answers here. He finds a lot of basically, like, I don't know what you'd even call them, containment tanks of, like, we see these alien creatures inside. He also finds ones with humans in them, the things strapped to their mouth. And then we get a really, like, just mind-blowing scene of him looking down and seeing the same tanks, but, like, very Matrix style, where it's just hundreds and hundreds. It looks like a farm of, like, these aliens/humans that are about to turn into aliens, etc.
It just shows you the scope of this now, like how big of a project this is and how long it's potentially been going on for. And yeah, this is like sort of the down the rabbit hole. Quite literally, he's fell down into. I wonder if that's like symbolism for it, but yeah, it literally is now. It's completely changed that now he's seen the scope of all this. And yeah, I just thought it was cool seeing. Again, it's some like CGI stuff, which
it looks exactly like the Matrix, doesn't it? Let's be fair.
It's some obvious CGI, but again, it's 1998. I'm not going to tear it apart too much. I actually thought it looked okay, and the bit where he first goes into it and like he's just in the first hallway and he's seen what they are. I thought the set dressing of this and for the entire like the set design of all this was really cool. Like, but if it's going to make this foray into like actual alien spaceships and like all this stuff that you're going to see now, I thought it did it really well because it looked like that kind of like dingy, like industrial kind of look to it. I just thought it looked brilliant. Like, it really impressed me, like how they've set this up. You could make it look like those 50s shows and stuff like that, but they sort of gave it that like 90s, early noughties grittiness to it, you know what I mean? Yeah. Like, I really thought this was really well done.
Another interesting point to note is just looking at it from the other side, this syndicate side, and we're not quite sure why they're being stored here, whether they're being stored to release one day or whether they're being, because we know that the refrigeration process sort of nullifies the black oil, at least for a time being.
Yeah, so we don't know whether.
Say that again?
It slows it down, I think, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly. So we don't know whether these people are being kept in stasis to prevent what's about to happen to them, or whether it's just they're being kept in there until the time's right, in which then, in case they'll be sort of left free. But let's not forget, the Syndicate believe that this black oil has taken over these people's minds and the aliens will take over these people. As far as we know, they have no idea that this massive lab of hundreds or thousands maybe of humans in tanks are potentially going to be these monstrous aliens that have come out. Yeah. Like, they have no idea that they could be sitting on something bigger than an atomic bomb, essentially.
Yeah, this is basically the army's already here. This invasion force.
And it's just all it takes is a matter of time for it all. God forbid, the lab collapsing.
That's my takeaway from this. Obviously, we'll talk about it at the end, but what happens in this makes me think, we've just had this big, they've pulled the trigger on showing all this, and we've got all this information about what's happening. But because Mulder essentially, like, makes an aggressive act on these aliens by, like, doing the virus, the vaccine, is this just going to speed everything up that they want to do and make them get way more aggressive pursuing it?
Very possibly. Yeah. It's gonna be interesting. I certainly think I'm happy to give you probably one of my predictions for next season early.
Yeah.
I would be very surprised if we don't see the Syndicate more actively going against the aliens next season. I think that's going to be a very interesting story where rather than Mulder fighting conspiracy after conspiracy after conspiracy, he's more stuck in the middle of these two warring factions.
Yeah.
I think that could be very interesting.
Yeah, I think we're going to have some more, like, what's it? Those team-ups where, like, the bad guys and the good guys have to team up and then the bad guys eventually screw over the good guys. And I think we're going to get a lot of those in the seasons to come.
So, again, really quickly, Mulder eventually does find Scully. She's got this thing taped to her mouth. And after basically cracking open this tank that she's in, He gives her the vaccine, and we see. I think it's. I'm not quite sure what exactly happens, but I think it's the oil being rejected by Scully's body and going back up the tube.
Yeah.
Which somehow, wherever it goes, it seems to cause this chain reaction where the entire facility starts to explode. And I don't really understand what exactly happened here.
Yeah.
Whatever happens, whatever Mulder does, it starts this chain reaction where alarms start going off. Everyone starts trying to evacuate the place. But more importantly, Scully comes back too. And he basically carries this. She's naked as she comes out, and he puts her coat over her. She's freezing. He revives her. And again, like a Superman, he basically carries her out of this facility. Not only just carries her out, climbs up with her on his back, and he manages to get her out. I did like the bit where she kind of almost dies for a second, and he resuscitates her for her to come back and give the most Mulder line I've ever heard of. I had you there, or something like that.
Yeah. I like that. All the while, around these aliens are trying to smash out of this thing, and it's like trying to kill them.
Yeah, basically the facility's falling apart big time. Yeah. Everyone above, all the syndicate, the cigarette smoking man's there, I should have said. Yeah. He knows Mulder's there, but he's just more concentrated on getting out of there. It's falling apart, we got to leave. It all culminates in this big moment where Mulder and Scully get out, and they're running away as the snow starts collapsing in on itself. They end up falling, and then get thrown back out and sliding off this big structure. And as we see this massive spaceship just lift up into the sky, hover over them, and then just slowly move off into the distance. I thought this was the funniest thing that Scully didn't see this, because she's like face down in the snow, and Mulder's just watching, and Mulder's like saying, Scully, you've got to see.
Yeah.
And Mulder's just watching, and she's like, typical, it's the same as every X-Files episode. But then they baited and switched us, and I thought this was brilliant, because Scully turns to Mulder and says, I saw it.
Yeah.
And genuinely, I literally had tears in my eyes, and I don't know why, but Mulder collapses in a state of like exhaustion at this point, and Scully just grabs him and holds him. And I don't know why. I think it was just the idea of Mulder going, I'm not alone anymore. Like, he's never been alone for the past 5 years, but for the first time, it's them. It's not him.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And I loved that. I thought that was such a perfect way to end it, because for the first time in Mulder's life, someone knows that someone's out there.
Yeah.
It's not just him trying to convince people. And I genuinely got teary-eyed. Like, it was really emotional, I thought.
Yeah. It's the perfect sort of catalyst for the rest of the season there. We've been saying that, like, season 5 feels like that transition series, and with this film sort of in the middle, it really has changed everything going into it. And so obviously we know more about what's happening, the plans, but now it feels like they're actually going to be on the same page. I mean, they've always been on the same page, but you know what I mean? They both aren't going to be like, oh, I don't know if that's real or whatnot. Scully's still going to be scientific. She even says that earlier on in the I think Mulder mentions it. He says, you always keep me on the straight and narrow. You always check me, or something like that. But now, at least, she'll be checking him, but she also knows that something is out there, like you said, and it's, it definitely feels like a change in what the series will be going forward. But it was nice to have that sort of ending moment as well at the end of the film, the first film.
Yeah, of her just holding him. I just thought that was beautiful. I thought it was a really well done shot.
Yeah.
So that's basically the end. I'll do a little bit of cleanup here, just like the end scenes. Scully goes to a hearing where she's basically told, none of your testimony counts. We don't believe you, which we knew would happen. Scully responds by handing her a vial with the bee in it, and basically says the FBI don't have a department anymore that can investigate something like this. Basically saying, well, you don't believe any of the evidence, and you don't have the facilities to examine this because you got rid of the X-Files.
Yeah, exactly.
I love this. It's a proper like stand up for herself moment. She meets with Mulder afterwards, and Mulder tells her,
how many times have we been here before, Scully? Right here. So close to the truth. And now with what we've seen and what we know, to be right back at the beginning with nothing.
This is different, Mulder.
No, it isn't. You were right to want to quit. You're right to want to leave me. You should get as far away from me as you can. I'm not going to watch you die, Scully, because of some hollow personal cause of mine. Go be a doctor. Go be a doctor while you still can.
I can't. I won't. Mulder, I'll be a doctor, but my work is here with you now. Look, that virus that I was exposed to, whatever it is, it has a cure. You held it in your hand. How many other lives can we save? Look. If I quit now, they win.
And she does mention as well, one of the most important things, the vaccine worked.
Yeah, yeah.
So now they have proof that there's something out there that could save people's lives, and that's what Scully's in it for as well. So,
but I do think as well, them saying that it was a weak vaccine, I wonder if that's going to come into play later on, whether there's going to be like a resurgence of this virus that's going to hit.
Possibly.
I have no idea what's going to happen, but I feel like them saying it was a weak vaccine was pointed, because he just could have said vaccine, you know what I mean? Like, and we go, oh, it's fixed there, it's all done. But the fact that he said weak vaccine could kind of say it's not perfect, there's some other kind of, something could happen. So there's still that kind of wrinkle in the story, you know what I mean? But ultimately it does work, yeah.
And then the final scene, we're in Tatooine in Tunisia.
Did you see? I picked up on that when he was like Tatooine. I was like, I didn't know that was a real place. So, like, is this like?
It's spelled differently. Yeah, but yeah, it is. It is. It's genuinely where they filmed Star Wars. I believe.
Yeah.
I know for a fact it's in Tunisia, so I just assume that they filmed it in Tatooine.
That's what I thought. Yeah, as soon as it said Tatooine, Tunisia, I was like, oh, I wonder if they actually just named it after that because they filmed it there. Then, like, yeah. But I thought it was funny.
Cigarette smoker man turns up. He's hot and bothered. He does not like to be in the desert. So I can tell you that right now. But he's at another crop field, and he goes to a guy who is credited. I don't know whether they mention his name at all, but he's credited as Conrad Strughold. And I don't know who this guy is, but like Cigarette smoker man seems to be reporting to him, and he basically says that Mulder is still a threat. Yeah. He doesn't seem that concerned until Cigarette Smoker Man gives him a letter, which is a telegram that he got through, saying something along the lines of, I don't have it note for note, but it's the X-Files has reopened, stop, what's going on, stop, or something along that lines.
Yeah, basically, yeah. What, how to proceed or something like that, yeah.
Yeah, it's panic. It's panic from the Syndicate because Mulder isn't going to stop looking for them, and on top of that, it sounds like the X-Files has been now officially reopened. Yeah.
So we sort of get that sort of return to the status quo, I guess. I mean, obviously the files have all been destroyed, so it's still going to be different, but at least, they're back working together officially, shall we say.
And that is the end of this film. Yeah. I feel like we got through that fairly well. I hope we didn't miss too much. I know we just breezed past a bit. What did you think of the film as a whole, Luke?
I really liked this. I felt like it worked. It worked as both like a film, as like this big screen spectacle. Mm-hmm. But it was also, it felt like just a mega episode, if you know what I mean. Like it felt like it didn't ruin what I expected an X-Files episode to be like on the big screen. So it sort of exceeded both of those. Again, there's parts of me that wonder how a newbie would have, like somebody who'd never watched X-Files before would have taken it. But again, from my viewing, that didn't bother me. I thought the action set pieces were all really well done. The plot was really interesting and really tight as well. I know it was a 2-hour film, but like, apart from the helicopter scene, there wasn't really any sort of lost time, you know what I mean? Like everything it felt really snappy. All the performances were really well done. I think like in showcasing the characters to a potential new audience, I think they nailed it. And again, we got so many like cameos of people that like for hardcore fans would have loved. And yeah, the fact that we got so much information about what the mythology is and basically what was been happening for the last 5 seasons, it feels like now we've got the full picture of what is going on, and like going from there, it's I mean, as a X-Files fan, the film to me is really, really good. Like it'd be like up there, one of the top episodes. But as I mentioned, the only criticism I have would be the sort of damsel in distress ending, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
But as said, I don't know how I'd have changed her. I don't know how else she'd do the story without that sort of storyline.
Yes, yeah.
I can pick apart it, but I don't have a solution. So again, it is sort of. I'm not being too harsh on that. That's literally my only criticism of this film, to be honest.
I think as well, if you have Scully actively going through with Mulder and like having this evidence shoved in her face, you don't get that ending scene of her choosing to believe Mulder, or like, you know what I mean? Like,
exactly.
Will she, won't she? So, yeah, there's definitely like pros and cons. I basically echo all of what you said. I do think this feels, not in a bad way, but it does feel more like a 2-hour episode of The X-Files.
Yeah.
And I think it's definitely more of, you get a lot more from it if you've watched it in the continuity of the seasons. I definitely think it's more fulfilling to watch it that way rather than as a standalone film. But yeah, I really enjoyed this, and not even just the simple thing as the novelty of seeing a film with the characters that we've grown to love, I thought was phenomenal. I really enjoyed it. Is it the best story X-Files ever told? Probably not, but probably one of the most fun, I would say, and one of the most enjoyable. And just get to see it like a full story that gets. We don't have to cut for time. We don't have to have like forced exposition. Like you said, I like the fact that we got to see them driving through dirt fields to get where they want to go, and just that little bit of banter between them. I like the fact that we got to see that. I thought this was a really, really good film, and it's definitely exceeded all expectations I had for it.
Luke's production notes.
Chris Carter explained that the main problem for creating the film was to create a story for which the viewer would not need to be familiar with the show's setting and the various story arcs. So again, this is something that I think they were aware of as well, and it definitely did feel like they made an effort to make it appealable to new fans.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Carter and Frank Spotnitz wrote major parts of the script in Hawaii over Christmas 1996. Upon his return from Hawaii, Carter looked for spare time to write the script. He returned to Hawaii and in 10 days wrote about half of the 124-page screenplay for the film.
It's interesting to hear how the difference between like TV episodes and film, because it's got to be such a huge deal, really. You know what I mean? Like you said, it's a completely different sort of medium in which to write for. Like, you don't need to like tie up all the loose ends in a TV show. Do you know what I mean? So fitting a one whole story that like everything gets concluded in a 2-hour thing, it's got to be completely different.
Do you know what? It's interesting as well that they sort of that it is a mythology like arc episode, I guess. The timing of it, because like they must have written all of the series leading up to it, knowing that the film was going to come out at a certain date. If the film was pushed back or recording of it was pushed back, it throws everything out, and then like they might have to do it so the X-Files is back together now, but in the film they'll be like, actually this was set before it. You know what I mean? Like the timing of it has to be perfect. Whereas they could have gone easier and just said, this is just a Monster of the Week episode that could happen any point in series 3 or something like that.
For sure.
The anime way of doing a film, I think.
Yeah, exactly.
During production, the filmmakers went to great lengths to preserve... I missed one. Carter enlisted Daniel Sackheim as a producer on the film. Sackheim had previously produced the pilot episode of The X-Files and directed several episodes in the first 2 seasons. The X-Files marks his first contribution as a producer to a feature film. So it's interesting that he didn't come back for other series, but was back for the film.
Yeah.
So,
but again, it might be the skill set thing of we like what you do in this regard, because it is a completely different way.
Yeah, exactly. During production, the filmmakers went to great lengths to preserve secrecy, including printing the script on red paper to prevent photocopying and leaking disinformation to the media and giving the film the code name Project Blackwood. The code was cracked by fans who speculated on the meaning behind it. During the North Texas scene, Blackwood County can be seen on the fire trucks responding to the infected boy. According to Spotnitz, Blackwood held no particular significance.
Oh, interesting.
I like the red photocopy paper bit. I didn't know that was a thing.
Yeah, me neither.
Yeah, it's interesting. Tip for anyone out there who wants a secret document. At the beginning of the pre-production phase, Carter and Bowman were busy with the television series, leaving Sackheim to work alone. Sackheim hired executive producer Lata Ryan, who had previously collaborated with Steven Spielberg on Jurassic Park. Once hired, sounding like Alan Partridge saying that. Once hired, Ryan was allowed to read the script in front of the 13 production staff members, but was not allowed to take it away.
See, that's fascinating. I mean, the thing is, it reveals a lot about the show, this film does, but you'd assume it's like everyone involved in the show would know what's going on, do you know what I mean? Know what direction they're heading, and maybe not. Apparently,
I cut this bit out of it, but yeah, apparently the production crew members who was basically guarding her from leaving with it had not read the script themselves, so they didn't know anything about what was going on, but yeah, they were sort of meant to keep it all under wraps. But I mean, you hear about this in loads of stuff that's like highly anticipated. Look at like Game of Thrones like finale and like the Star Wars finale scripts and stuff like that. They were
yeah, it's true. I know like in some of like the more important Marvel films, the actors literally get given their scripts and nothing else, and the rest of the story doesn't matter.
Yeah,
and even their scripts, it's like you'll only get certain parts, and like the more important parts you'll get a few days before filming and stuff like that.
Yeah, exactly. It's mad, really, isn't it? Because you sort of think, well, how would they get I mean, it worked because it's good, it's great still. But how would they have the context for this scene? And
exactly,
but hey, actors have their own ways of doing things, I guess.
Yeah.
Both Carter and Spotnitz wanted to make the film bigger than the series, so they decided to start and end the film at an extreme place and explain aspects of the story arc that the show had not. While gathering research material, they learned that the Earth was once covered with ice and decided to open the film in Texas in 35 BC, with human primitives as the first characters to appear.
I thought that was cool as well, having a snow-covered landscape as the beginning and end of the film. I thought that worked quite well to sort of just bookend both of the whole bulk of the film.
And then when it gets that like sort of change, like that's solved, it goes to the exact opposite, a desert. You know what I mean?
Yes, like, exactly. Yeah, it's spot on. The next phase of this.
Yeah. New actors and characters to the franchise include Martin Landau and Blythe Danner. I have no idea who they play. I think Martin Landau was the guy who got killed and put in the boot.
Yeah, I don't. I wouldn't be able to tell you which one's which.
I think Blythe Danner was the guy who got buried. I think that's who they are, but again, I'm not 100% sure. I might be very wrong.
Okay, so you are wrong. Martin Landau, I believe, played the Doctor. Mm-hmm. So what was his name again? Kurzweil?
Yeah, that's who I thought that one was, yeah.
Okay. Blythe Danner played the woman that was in charge of the investigation.
Oh, Dina from Meet the Parents.
Yes.
Yeah. I recognised her from that, and I was like, oh, she's a very official role.
I didn't recognise her, but yeah, it definitely is her, yeah.
I like that she's in the FBI in this film, and then in that, it's, Robert De Niro.
I didn't recognise her, that's interesting, that, yeah. But yeah, that's who... Okay. So, yeah, to be fair, I didn't recognise her, but yeah, she is a well-known actress.
Yeah. The signing of the actors broke what had become tradition for the X-Files. Carter had purposely cast virtual unknown actors for the television series to make it more believable. Yeah, he stated, as soon as you put in an actor whose face is recognisable, you get a situation that works against the reality of the show. I mean, they don't mention Terry O'Quinn, but I feel like he wasn't at the heights that we know him as. So.
Definitely not. To be honest, I don't think he is at those heights anymore. I reckon people might recognise him as Locke, but we're definitely biased to how popular this guy is.
yeah, we're like, hey, it's John Locke. Everyone's like, who the hell is John Locke?
Yeah, this is like, let me put this into perspective for everyone out there that may not have watched Lost. This guy shows up on screen. It's like Brad Pitt for me and Luke. Like we're like starstruck.
Honestly, if I saw him in an airport, I wouldn't know what to say.
I would get clammy.
Never heard Terry O'Quinn compared to Brad Pitt. Sorry, that's tickled me. But yeah,
it's a more handsome version.
Yeah,
That's right.
Hey, leave him alone.
No, I'm talking about Terry O'Quinn.
Yeah, well, obviously, yeah.
I ain't leaving Brad Pitt alone. He gets everything. Just he can take a loss once in a while.
Yeah. I hope he's listening.
He is.
Noack, the production designer, wanted to start the design process after talking through the story with the filmmakers so they could formulate a sense of the atmosphere which they wanted to create for the film. He wanted to create a dark, scary and oppressive environment for the characters, especially Mulder. While familiar with the TV series, Noack decided not to review any episodes as preparation for his role in the production. Explaining this decision, he said, "I wanted the movie to be as fresh and new as possible in its design. Of course, there are some elements from the show that had to be retained."
Yeah, it did feel different enough where it felt special. Yeah, I agree with that.
So in that respect, he definitely nailed it. Carter and Bowman wanted to film in as many different locations as possible to give the film a grander feel than had been achievable for the TV episodes. This was something I was going to bring up, actually. There's more to this point, but yeah, it did feel like they were globe-trotting for this. They seemed to go all over the shop with it. Literally
to Texas, back to Washington the same day. You know what I mean? Like
to the Arctic, to London. Yeah, it was going all over the place. So yeah, it definitely felt much bigger, I suppose. The tighter schedule, with only 8 weeks of pre-production and 45 days of principal photography, still caused the production to have less shooting locations than planned. Los Angeles ended up doubling in for Dallas and London, though a shot was done in London with a double. And the ice scenes, initially envisaged for an ice field in Alaska, were moved to Whistler, British Columbia, near the show's regular location in Vancouver.
Interesting.
And then a few on the music. Mark Snow, who had worked on the television series as a composer, was hired to score the film. Chris Carter wanted a very minimalist approach to the music. He did not want much melody and wanted to replace it with plain ambient atmosphere and a sound design. Snow mixed electronic music with an 85-member orchestra to give the film a great sense of scope and grandeur. When creating the music for the film, Snow had a couple of months to write and produce the music whilst he was doing the television series at the same time. The film marked the first time in the history of the franchise that music was composed and recorded with the help of an orchestra, although according to Snow, this was no significant change to the writing and recording process.
I have to admit, I can't say that I noticed anything to do with like the soundtrack of the film. That's probably not a bad thing, though. It felt X-Files-y. Yeah. I know that sounds really sort of immature way to put it, but it still retained the X-Files feel. So for me, that's job done. I don't think it needed like this big sort of action, explosive, new sort of orchestra behind it. You know what I mean? I think it worked as well as it could have done. So I think the fact that I didn't notice it is a compliment in itself, to be fair.
The only time I noticed the music was on the bit where they were driving, and you get that sort of, it's sort of like a redone version of the intro, where it's like, and it's, I didn't know what instrument it's on. It's kind of like that electric thing, but yeah, it's like the tune of the intro, but like sort of stretched out for the drive. That's the only time I noticed the music. Other than that, it did feel just like, you know, I don't want to say generic, but you know what I mean? Like that sort of score that fits in with what's going on. But yeah.
It stinks.
Welcome to the Critic Files.
What would you give this episode?
This film.
Oh God, this film.
So it's a bit of an awkward one. I'm gonna go for an 8.5.
An 8.5.
I don't think it was like the best story that X-Files ever done, and it is weird to compare it to episodes because I'm trying to sort of give the episodes a fair chance because obviously there's only so much they can do in a 40-minute episode. Mm-hmm. So I don't want to like score it too high that it takes over some of the X-Files episodes that I've scored. I think 8.5 is fair for what it is, but I did very much enjoy it.
Do you know what? I think initially in my head I was like, this is about an 8.5 of what I'd give it. But I've started doing everything now on what I'd rate it on IMDb, and because IMDb doesn't do like half scores, I just gave it a 4. I just rounded it up, so I went with a 9 in the end on this. But, I mean, if I was being granular, I'd probably give it about an 8.5 as well, but 9. We'll say, keep it a little bit of difference, we'll go for a 9. But
9, I like it, 9.
I thought it was really strong. Like, again, it's not the best episode that I've seen of the X-Files. It's not the best version of the X-Files I've seen, if you know what I mean. But I did think it was strong. Like, it was still a strong contender for that. So, what I thought was interesting was the critical review on IMDb. Okay. So I didn't really take any like critics' reviews of it, but they sort of had some interesting notes. But the overall score on IMDb from, and this is a change, from 101,736 votes, so a bit more than what we usually have.
Yeah, definitely.
Was a 7.1, which I thought was quite low for what it is, but I think we discussed this off air, but we can sort of rehash this conversation. I feel like people are coming into this have not seen, or a lot of people coming in to see this have not seen the TV series beforehand. They're kind of just going into this like blind. I like your analogy of it.
It all kind of goes into the context of the film.
Yeah.
I think if you're going into this as a singular film, maybe it doesn't score as well. And the thing is, we can't judge it like that. Like, that's physically impossible for us to judge it like that because we're not in that situation. Mm-hmm. We can only give it what we believe and what we've experienced. Mm-hmm. I think if you're going in watching it as a part of a whole thing, as a part of a series, the next part of the continuation of the seasons, I think it holds up so much better as to an individual. So I'm not saying that, like, who are we to say we might just enjoy it more than the average person? And who are we to say that a 7 mark person, someone who marked it a 7, should I say, isn't correct? But I wonder if that has anything to do with it.
Yeah.
I can certainly see someone coming into this fresh, not knowing any context, and going, it looked cool and it was a good film, but like it was a bit all over the place with the plot because I didn't know what was going on with here, this and this and this, and then all of a sudden there's bees.
Yeah, exactly.
I can see that happening.
Yeah, I again, watching along with it, I could see the points where I was like, if you're not a fan, this would be difficult, or there'd be parts where I liked your analogy earlier on where you were saying similar to like the Star Trek films. Like, obviously, like you've seen Star Trek, but not like this TV, so done the same as well. But like, I wonder if, how much enjoyment you'd get more if you'd watched it. And it definitely feels like that caters more towards the casual fan. Whereas this, the fact that it's a mythology mythology story means you kind of have to know the show, really, I think. So it is strange that they didn't go for that Monster of the Week to sort of get in as many people as they could on board.
I mean, even the show doesn't really cater, even though it's trying to cater to that audience, that sort of casual audience with this film, as it has to. Like, if you're going to put a film out, you've got to try and cater to the average person as well. But the show doesn't really lend itself to that format anyway.
No.
Especially when you think there's 2 pretty main characters in this show who, even us who have watched 6 or 5 seasons and a film's worth, we still don't know their names.
Yeah.
And those names never revealed. And as a film, if you're coming into this fresh phase, we accept that. It's harder for other people to accept the fact that most of the characters, you don't know who they are. You've got to try and describe them, and that's it. That's just simple sort of. So it does make me wonder how much that affects the score. But then maybe that doesn't affect the score at all, and maybe people just wasn't a big fan of this film. I don't know. But I personally, I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I did too.
Welcome to Dan's Twitter Corner.
So, Ray Noel tweeted in saying, just listened to the Pine Bluff variant and Foley Do. I loved your discussions in this episode regarding the basketball. I know we mentioned Mulder having separate hobbies. We've seen Mulder always dribbling basketball, like in Chinga, and he did a free shot bet in Paper Heart. So that's where you got that idea of him liking basketball from.
Yeah.
I do remember the free shot. That's the one scene I do remember. I don't know why that sticks in my head.
That's what I was trying to describe on the episode, but I didn't know what it was called.
Yeah. On the same episode, Kathy tweets in saying, really liked your take on Foley Jew and the monster, hostage, monster twists. Vince Gilligan is a master of continuity details like the taped fingers that you mentioned. One of the reasons he's my favourite X-Files writer. I believe you replied to this one about Breaking Bad, the other show he did.
Yeah, I sort of said, maybe I should watch that.
Well, something I didn't know, because Kathy did also mention that apparently there's tons of X-Files, like little sort of Easter eggs in Breaking Bad. Okay. Which, obviously, as I've watched through, I love Breaking Bad, but I've watched it before X-Files. So I've got to say thank you to Kathy, because it's given me a reason to revisit it. I definitely think I'm going to go through it again. I'll be interested to see whether I pick any of those up myself.
I feel like I'm going to have to watch that as like a sequel now. Once we're finally done with the X-Files, I'll have to watch Breaking Bad.
So imagine they're in the same universe.
That's what my brain's going to be on. Like, yeah.
Also, Green Elf Oz got in touch. She said, but nothing has made me happier than Luke mispronouncing Fowley's name for the entire of Most Unwanted podcast episode. What are you going to say about that, Luke?
What did I say? I can't even remember. It's been a while ago. Did I call her Foley or something like that?
I've got no idea. I can't remember.
No, I'll be honest.
But I'm. You know what? Me and Green Elf Oz had our differences, but I feel like we can come together in mutual disdain for the fact you can't get this right.
Yeah. I mean, I reckon now I'm just for the meme of this. I need to continue you doing the wrong pronunciation of.
We need to find out what you called her, and then just use that. That's her name on this show from now on. Yeah. I don't even know what you said. I genuinely don't. I'm worried I'm saying it wrong now. It is Diana Fowley. I'm sure that's what it is, but I'm worried I'm saying it wrong.
Yeah, I had this the other day. Like, somebody asked me like what we'd said on a podcast, and I literally was blanked. I was like, I don't know. Like, honestly, once I've recorded it and done the editing, it's gone straight out of my head a lot of the time.
It is a strange feeling, to be honest, because back in the day when we first started, it felt like we was going over every sort of statement that we'd make, and we'd sort of pour over and figure out like what we said here, what we said there. Now, I mean, I'm talking for myself, so by all means disagree with me. I feel like our podcast episodes are a little bit more like therapy, in the sense of I think I just come on here and just let it all out, and then I'm the same. I just forget about it.
Yeah.
It feels like I've just sort of everything that I've been thinking about the show, I get off my chest and I walk away, and I never think about that episode again of the podcast. I mean, do you know what I mean?
Do you know I've listened to other people talk about this, because like there's a long-standing podcast I listen to, and like I can remember stuff that they said from like episodes like years and years ago, and I'll remember all of it. And they've said on there that they, once it's edited and out, they don't remember anything of what's happened. Like somebody will call them up and mention something like I just mentioned 2 years ago, and they're like, I don't remember. And I was like, how can they not remember? Surely you'd remember this if you did. Now I find myself in the situation of 150 odd episodes, nearly 150 episodes in, and I'm like, I couldn't tell you what I'd said in like episode 56. Like, I don't even remember what
I think that's good though, because I think that that's when you get the most real versions of me and you.
Yeah.
Like, the reason why we don't remember it is because what people are essentially listening to when they download this podcast is me and you having a chat.
Yeah.
It's not like this planned sort of thing that we do, that we've got it all scripted down. It's me and you having a chat about a show that we like.
Yeah.
That's all, and I think that's more enjoyable than the alternative.
Yeah.
So that's the only reason why we don't remember it, is because we don't remember every chat we've ever had. Do you know what I mean?
Imagine if you did. That would drive you insane.
Would we still be friends? I don't know.
No, that just reminds me of that Black Mirror episode where, do you know, where they like record all their like things and just pull apart their arguments and be like, that's not what you said 3 years and 2 days ago.
Well, you know what? This being said, this means that forever you will always be known as the person who mispronounced Diana Fowley's name.
Pretty much, yeah.
And possibly me if I'm mispronouncing it now, so we'll see. But yeah, and by all means, if anyone picks up on any other words that Luke mispronounces, please tweet in. Let us know. I want to rip Luke for more of this. So,
and if you let me know, I will continue to carry on mispronouncing it. So,
I want to get to a point where you're saying, on this week's of the F-Files.
Just everything is wrong, like some kind of, Roald Dahl novel or something like that.
I'll get to one more tweet before we end the show. Jen Shep got in touch, said, I've always enjoyed the end, as in the episode. Mm-hmm. That final shot panning across the burnt-out office and Mulder's reaction still gives me chills. Interestingly, watching now, I find myself having a little more sympathy for Spender. As you guys said, he was really just a pawn here. I'm looking forward to see... hopefully we see Spender a little bit more, because I'm looking forward to seeing what happens to him and what part he has to play in the future episodes.
Yeah.
But not just that, if you don't mind me taking a little bit longer with this, I think this film as well, I think this has made next season so interesting now. I just can't wait to see what they do with it.
And if you're after a segue, this has made my predictions... predictions? I don't know what...
Great segue, Luke.
It's made my predictions, like... I was going to say predictions brain, but I was like, what's that? That's just a brain. It's really setting into overdrive, though, because there's so much stuff now where I'm like, oh, but if that's happening, like... Does that mean that this is going to happen? And then, like, there's so much to come from it. Because we know so much now, I feel like our predictions are going to be a lot more targeted this season. I mean, this could be me eating my words in a few months' time. But
we shall see,
who knows? Who knows?
Well, on that point, this is season 5 of the X-Files finished, if you include the film in that. And now also season 5 of Most Unwanted podcast. Done, and that's on the slate. We can get that out there. We are still coming back for our post-season content, so you'll get the usual predictions episode, which I know everyone loves the predictions episode. It's one of the people's favourite episodes of ours, because we usually make fools of ourselves. We've also got our season review, and our top 5 favourite episodes from the entirety of the X-Files.
Yeah.
So I reckon there's going to be a lot of changes on that as well. So they will be being released over the next couple of weeks. And then we're going to have a little bit of a break before season 6. So just keep an eye out on our social media, and we'll let you know when we're coming back for that. But in the meantime, keep getting in touch with us. Find us on Twitter at Most Unwanted Podcast. Just type in Most Unwanted Pod, you'll find us. And let us know what you thought of the season, what you thought of the film, whether you've got any thoughts on that. We're very interested to hear your thoughts and opinions on it. We might be able to put some of those thoughts into our post content as well, if they get in on time, because I don't know quite when we're recording those, but we'll figure that out again. So, yeah. But as for this film and season 5... It's not been a bad season, has it?
It's been a really good one. It definitely feels like the top 5 episodes is going to up for a major shake-up. So, yeah, definitely. I'm looking forward to it. Well,
I'm looking forward to recording those little mini episodes. Mm-hmm. So, we shall see you next week with part 1 of those. And, looking forward to it.
See you then.